I recently purchased this anvil from a fella for about 200 bucks. I don't know if I got ripped off or not, but I haven't seen a 110-pound anvil any cheaper anywhere. There's not a trade name on it, so I have to assume it's a Chinese anvil. But I think it'll work just fine for me. I need to make a stand for it, and what I want to make is a stand like what you see right here on my vise. And I have several of these wheels I've collected over the years. I don't know, maybe 8 of them. 4 projects just like this. And I like to, as you can see, I like to bolt right to where the wheel studs would be through the wheel. And I made this plate for the anvil plenty thick enough. It's a thick one. Got the holes drilled in it. I pulled this out of a scrap pile at work. Somebody had cut it round, and that's where they started their cut with the torch. And I'll just weld that shut, just so it'll be prettier. And I'll also grind off and buff off all this scale. And I'll show you it as it goes. I have welded the post on the plate that was set on the wheel of my anvil stand. As you can see, that's a pretty crappy weld. They say if you're a good welder, you don't have to grind much. I think I'm going to be doing a lot of grinding. Well, I've ground this down good enough. It ought to hold. Now I'm going to work on the wheel. I've placed these sheet metal pieces over these holes in the wheel, and I'm going to tack those on because on this anvil stand, I'm not sure, but I may want to fill this in with concrete, add weight to it. I did that with my vise stand because the vise was just too tippy. The anvil stand will be much shorter. I'm going to try it without the cement first, and if I don't like that, then I can always take it off and put the cement in. I will also attach the post and weld bolts into those holes, and that's what will secure it. And then that way I can, down the road, fill it in with concrete. Got all the cover plates welded in to cover the holes. I also welded in the bolts and the washers. If I do fill that with cement, I'll never be able to get to those again. And it helps when tightening them down and so forth. Yes, before you say anything, I know you're not supposed to weld on galvanized zinc-coated metals, but it's just a tack. It was just a tack. I was very careful. I have witnessed with some of my old co-workers what happens when you weld too much galvanized and breathe the fumes in. It's not a good thing. I welded a cross of rebar in there to help hold in concrete if I determine that I'll need the concrete. Other than that, I'm done welding for a while. The next chore is to make a plate for the anvil to sit on. So here's how far I've gotten. The plate on the bottom, got the holes drilled. I've got the bolts welded on the back side and attached, and the pipe welded on. Now the next step on the anvil stand is to take this rather sizable hunk of steel. You can see it's very thick and heavy, about 3/4 inch, maybe 1. I'm going to trim up the ends because they were fairly rough cut. I pulled this out of a scrap dumpster at work, and that's going to be welded to the top of the post, and the anvil will set on that, and there'll be a cushion of rubber belting that will go between the anvil and that plate. Now the anvil has a hole in the bottom, a square hole, which just so happens to fit this tubing. And so I'm going to take a small piece of this tubing and weld it to the center after I have got it welded to the post. And that'll be pretty much it, except for cutting the rubber to set on top of there. This is the setup to weld the base to that the anvil will set on the anvil stand. As you know, I already welded the bottom part on. I'm not going to show you the actual welding. Don't want to subject my camera to that bright arc. Well, there it is. I've got it welded. Again, had to do a lot of grinding. Not very pretty. I've got to practice a lot more on my welding. But you know what? It'll hold, and if it doesn't hold, I'll weld it again. Alright, there's what I have so far. You can see where the anvil's going to set. It's about the right height for me. Anvil might set about that much higher. Be perfect. Now I've got to put that right in the center, and that will hold the anvil in place. Well, there she sits. I've got the square piece welded to the top, welded on the inside, and I've spray painted it. You've got to have your anvil stand looking pretty. Okay, so I cut out this piece of rubber, and the center fits that tubing that I cut off, and it is going to lie underneath the anvil and provide cushion like the stump that came with my anvil. Going to place the rubber belting on there. There it is, a perfect fit. Now to put the anvil on. Well, there it is. The anvil on the anvil stand. I think it'll work good enough for me. Indoors anyway. I still plan to use the stump outside. Please like, share, and subscribe. The Old Salt Miner.